friends. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. Welcome, friends, readers, listeners, and viewers from across America and around the world. I am your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen here on Revolution Radio. And as always, it's a great honor to be here before you, to have your attention, and to be able to share all the things that we've come to discernment upon in this strange and bizarre world where sometimes things are most certainly stranger than the reality of what we are contending with. I'm honored to have as a guest with me prolific author Noel Hadley. Noel, are you there, brother?
I am here. Can you hear me?
I can, and you sound really good, and so everything should be a go. But we are celebrating the release of his latest book, The Hidden Hand of Camelot. And so, and also he'll be releasing very soon the second part in the series where he's going through the timeline and the history of America across the ages and explaining, like, for instance, the Hidden Hand of Camelot is the title of the newest release. And so why don't we start there, Noel, with why you selected the title and what is the deeper meaning behind it?
Absolutely. Zen, thank you for having me on. And before I explain that, I must congratulate you on, I was shopping, looking through YouTube, and I came across the Flatlanders trailer, and there you were in it. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And and I was shocked to actually see myself in the trailer. I'm like, wait, how did I end up in this? Because I was there at the conference and some dudes came and told me I had to go up to some room, and I thought I was being interrogated. I don't know if they were like I didn't know if they were the CIA, the MI6, Mossad. I mean, I walked into the room. There was this some people, and there was some lights, a camera, and some blonde woman in a chair. And I was just trying to answer their questions and get out of there. But somehow I ended up in a documentary. So hopefully my mother will be proud.
Oh, that's really great, brother. And you know, they are and have been presenting a very professional perspective to the whole question and consideration of this topic. And so I'm very excited for them and also us and the community at large, because I feel that everybody will be blessed by where they didn't enter into the project with a bias to slant the community or those that believe and know that the earth has no curvature and that we are not moving in circle around the sun. And so, very exciting to see what comes of the project. And I know that, just as they got you and made you part of this project as well, that they gathered up as many people as they could from the conference that well respected for their opinions and having done a lot of work, even yourself, in writing the many book titles, The Unexpected Cosmology, in consideration to not only the biographies of a lot of people, but also to the overall story of the movement. And so go ahead, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, so everyone else is in the trailer talking about like the curve of the earth, and all of a sudden I pop on and I'm talking about Socrates. Anyways, which is kind of bring us into the unexpected cosmology. Now, I was on your show a little over a year ago, and that was just when COVID 1984 was starting to break out. And when just as a refresher, I was working on this massive project called The Unexpected Cosmology, which is a history of the truth movement, basically through world history. I mean, I'm going all the way back to Babylon and to Eden. And it was a project that was really unique because it was, although I couldn't, take the microphone back to people hundreds of years ago, it was interviewing you and Rob Skiba and Shelley Lewis from Flatlanders and so many other people, and getting their stories and their pursuit of truth and so on and so forth. And COVID-19 hit and kind of derailed that project. It shook me up in a lot of ways because I saw the world. I guess I pulled back too many curtains, and I saw the world in even a deeper, a whole new light. And basically, I went back to the typewriter and I started clapping away. And that book project, The Unexpected Cosmology, became my new online magazine, which is called The Unexpected Cosmology. And so anybody who goes there to The Unexpected Cosmology, every single Friday I release new articles. To give you a taste of some of the articles I've been releasing week by week. One week will be showing how germ theory is a hoax. The next will be how the atomic bomb is a hoax. The next is how the Titanic never sank and that was a hoax. The next will be on the Holocaust. The next will be on Zionism or spooks or the sons of Cain, or I delve into a lot of genealogies and that kind of stuff. And before we talk about the Hidden Hand of Camelot specifically, I feel that it is important for anyone who doesn't know me out there to really address what I do believe, because I'm about to talk about things where I'm going to be picking apart the fragile reality before us, the television and Illuminati written history books, up through grades kindergarten through 12 have indoctrinated us into believing. My theme verse is Revelation 14:12. It's what I live by. It's what I base all my writings on. And it says thus. There's, I think, 3 passages in the book of Revelation which talks about those who are written in the book of life. And we know that those who are written in the book of life, or at least not erased from the book of life, the dragon is at war with. And Revelation 14:12 says that the 2 requirements are those who keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahusha. And so I live by Torah as the face of our Father, as a reflection of his character and who he is, and also the testimony of Yahusha. And then my other theme verse is Psalm 119:105, which I've talked about on your show before, probably a few years ago, where I talk about how the psalmist who wrote Psalm 119 had such an abysmally dark view of the world that he said that that it is Yah's light. His word. Or you could say his Torah, which we know as Yahusha as well, that is the light in the darkness. That if we do not have his word, then we are, no matter how illuminated, self-illuminated or enlightened we are, we're still walking through the darkness. And so I believe scripture is true, and it has proven itself to me to be true. And we're not just talking about the King Jimmy 66. We're talking about all the extra books as well, Jasher, Enoch, and all the things, it's so many of the ones you talk about. They're just all phenomenal. So, all right. So the Cosmology project. I'm currently writing a multi-volume series, much like I was last time I was on your show, called The Unexpected Cosmology, in which I'm just going through the decades, the centuries, and just showing how the intel community has been controlling the narrative. The entire narrative is false, but they are leading us into these false presumptions. And the way I like to think about the intel community, you could say, oh, it's the Roman Catholic Church, or it's the Zionists, or it's the Freemasons, or the Jesuits, or all these different, I like to think of the sons of Cain, really. But the intel community, whether it's the CIA, MI6, Mossad, whatever, they're basically like that Steve McQueen movie from the 1950s, The Blob. If anyone remembers that movie, where it started out, this blob comes to Earth, and it's like a roll of jelly, and it fits into someone's hand, but it starts eating people, and pretty soon, as it eats more and more people, it becomes the size of buildings, and it's consuming everything. That's basically what our reality is like now, where everything in the media, everything in the news is a controlled narrative that is mostly false. So the Hidden Hand of Camelot specifically takes my writings from 1960 up through 1968-ish. And anyone who is familiar with the Kennedy administration will know that Camelot is a reference to Kennedy and how the 60s were kind of the face he put on it. But the thing is, though, is that Camelot is all an illusion. None of it is real. So one of the things I talk about in my writings is magic. What is real magic? And I have to stress that even though Intel is running the world, the supernatural is behind the scenes running it as well. So the question is, what is magic? Now, Hollywood would have you believe, and Shakespeare, that there's these three wayward sisters that are, throwing like a gangrenous gorilla toe and a unicorn horn and, like just into some pot and, like toenails and things like that. And they're stirring it around and casting some spell and they're riding around on brooms. That's all misinformation. It's the distraction from the reality, which is the theme word is psychodrama. If everybody can understand what psychodrama is, they can start looking out at the world and realizing, oh my goodness, magic is real and they're actually casting these spells, like COVID-19. And once I explain what psychodrama is, hopefully you could see COVID-19 as this big, massive magical ceremony, which is alchemically transforming people and molding them into the image of the beast. So psychodrama goes all the way back to really the Egyptians and the Book of the Dead. As Moses was brought up through the mystery religions before he met the Most High in the desert, he would have been familiar with it. We read in the Bible that Jezebel actually ruled her kingdom by magic. And again, people think of pots and brooms and all these kind of things, but very likely, I think Jezebel ruled her kingdom very similar to how it's ruled today. Through performance witchcraft. So performance witchcraft goes all the way back to Babylon. And what would happen is that, and the key here is that it has to be fake. You don't really kill people off. The magic works in the fakery, in the acting. You go up, you perform on a stage for people, and you cause them to feel certain emotions: fear, excitement, joy, sorrow. And as the actor is up on stage performing this, they are actually basically acting as the shaman that is opening up the doorway for the spirits, for the gods to do their work. So Anton LaVey, who himself, he's just a mannequin, he's a spook. I don't take him seriously. That being said, his quote, I do believe, is true. He says that the psychodrama is the most common form of magic employed in all the occult and all the mystery religions. So to give the viewers an example of what a psychodrama is that if you were to go into therapy and your therapist were to perform a psychodrama on you, they would basically cast you into a role where you would play as the protagonist, and you would have to survive a situation. And as you survive the situation, they are then able to mold your thinking, your subconscious, your morality, your emotions, all these different things. If you think of an easy example of this that hopefully people can almost on a very exoteric scale, is something like Walt Disney World. If you go to Disney World, you're going to go on a series of rides like space, like Star Tours. Oh no, I'm flying through space and we're going to blow up. Oh, we survived. Or, the Indiana Jones ride, or, you go down this list of all these different rides, Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion, all these things. And as you survive these situations that are thrilling and exciting, they're able to mold your thinking and indoctrinate you, right? And that's real magic. So you can see in the title right there, the Hidden Hand of Camelot. Well, the hidden hand is the magic. It's the psychodrama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can totally see how, all the world's a stage and they're playing it out in front of us. It's like the whole thing of, I forget the TV guy that was on when the moon landing hoax was being perpetuated upon the whole world.
Yeah, no, they've been doing this for a very, very long time. I mentioned the Titanic. I believe the Titanic never sank. It was all a psychodrama. It was, all to, alchemically change people. But even you go back further, I believe the Lincoln assassination was a hoax, and I could prove why it was. I would take it all the way back further to, Socrates has my suspicions that, his own, that Plato, whatever, that whole thing is just has my suspicion. But where we pick up really in the Hidden Hand of Camelot is the John F. Kennedy assassination. Now, you had just brought up the moon landing footage, and I would assume that all of your viewers, or the bulk of them, would be under the understanding that the Apollo 11 moon mission was faked. In fact, all the Apollo missions were faked. All the footage was faked, filmed in a Hollywood basement. To be precise, it was probably filmed at Lookout Mountain in Laurel Canyon, which is Hollywood. It's a secret Air Force base there. Most people would never think to question in their minds that the JFK footage, as we know as the Zapruder film, is a total hoax. It's not real. It's actually composite imaging, just like we see with the atomic bomb footage over Hiroshima. And I want to go through some of those details as I describe in my book. And then, of course, the book from there goes on and just talks about the 60s as a whole and how Intel was running everything. Like, Americans have this idea that everything is organic, and it's just these, the capitalist dream that you can rise through the ranks and achieve all these things, and you could be the next Timothy Leary or, whatever. I mean, you could be the next, Allen Ginsberg or John Lennon or Paul McCartney, all these people, and they're all working for the same people. So when I first wrote it was a 2-part paper that I released on Cosmology on the Kennedy assassination. Let's see if I can pull it up here. It doesn't matter what I write on. It seems like if I wrote a paper like on how the Tanya Harding Nancy Kerrigan clubbing was a hoax, shamefully so. And I'm surprised that somebody didn't contact me who was in that arena, because no matter what I write about, like, somebody was like, no, I was there, and that, that really happened. And so I wrote on the Kennedy assassination, and then somebody contacted me, and they said, no, you're wrong, because my Uncle Ernie, or maybe it was his Uncle Albert, I'm not sure. He said, my Uncle Albert was there, and he picked up a piece of Kennedy's skull in the street, and he carried it to the hospital on his own to give it to Kennedy, to the Secret Service in the hospital, and that's proof that he really, it all really happened. And I had to ask him. I sat there quietly, kind of let him talk, and I finally asked, said, is your uncle a Freemason? And he's like, yeah, he was a 33-degree Mason. And I'm like, I was like, okay, the defense rests. And actually, he went on to actually say that he said every single person in Dealey Plaza was a Freemason, everyone. And I was like, well, I don't know. Either you see that or you don't. And now people will tell me, they'll say, well, see, that's proof that the Freemasons had this, this plan to assassinate the president. So, all right. So you look at the guy holding the, and I'm not going to go through all the details. There's so many details in my book that I can't possibly cover them all in this show. I'll kind of give an overview. Hopefully gives everyone kind of a taste for what they're going to be looking at. And all of this research, by the way, is on my website as well. The guy holding the camera, where we get the name Zapruder, his name is Abraham Zapruder. Okay. He was a 33-degree Mason, which for me is a deal breaker right there. He had ties to the CIA. His history, he had been working in Dealey Plaza for years. He was probably the scout who scouted out the location. But then Dealey Plaza itself is an actual kind of a Freemason compass pyramid shape with, obelisk in there. It's a ceremony site. as I started looking into this, like I had just mentioned, every single person involved were Freemasons, including on the Warren Commission. And as you trace all these people in the Warren Commission, you see that they're in all these other these intel psyops and all these other hoaxes. And what I stress is that even the guy, so even like the second shooter theory, who came up with the second shooter theory? A 33-degree Freemason did, Arlen Specter, I believe his name is. And so you could see how they're actually creating this narrative for us naughty hounds to go chasing after this scent, and it's leading in the wrong direction. There is no second shooter because there is no first shooter, in my opinion. And we're going to get to the film in a second. You look at Lee Harvey Oswald and, talk about the Sons of Cain. This guy is related to everybody. He's like cousins with Eleanor Roosevelt. He's related to Marilyn Monroe. They're all, as I say, all spooks are related to each other. The guy was, not to mention his photos are doctored. When you look at the pictures of Johnson being sworn in on the tarmac in Dallas, you just look at the people in that room. I mean, Jack Valenti is there, and he was the president of the Motion Picture Association of America. In fact, a lot of movie people were there. A lot of Hollywood people were there on the scene. All right, so let me just scan through this really quickly here. Let's see. Oh yeah, Hugh Jameson was there, another film guy. He's the guy that developed the footage. We're told that when you actually look at the footage, Abraham Zapruder is. Oh, another thing I'd love to point out is the fact that as the Lincoln, which I think is a nod to Abraham Lincoln, obviously, the Ford Theater, Ford Lincoln, as it's coming around the corner, let's just talk about that. Let's see, how long is the footage? The footage is, I think, 28 seconds, or is it 26 seconds? It's really short. Well, the first anomaly happens. Abraham Zapruder is standing up on this platform. Now, you imagine if you were to go see the president of the United States, that Dealey Plaza would be the most amazing place to see him. If anyone has ever been there, it's almost like this natural auditorium of the grass that rises. It was a perfectly warm day, and yet there's nobody there. There's just a few crisis actors. Back then, nobody knew what a crisis actor was, but they're clearly crisis actors standing there, while the rest of the streets are, totally packed full of people. And so, Abraham Zapruder, he's standing there with a perfect view. And something really strange happens. He's watching the police motorcade come around the corner, and all of a sudden, if you pay attention to this, like 28 seconds, the president pops into view, and you're like, wait a second here, whoa, wait. He's on a Super 8 camera. Okay, so people estimate that about 30 seconds of film are missing here. All right. Now, if he were to shut off his camera and start it up again, there should be, with a Super 8, there should be exposure. We should be able to see an overexposure for like 2 or 3 seconds, which you don't see. So clearly there was a cut that happened there. That's not the odd part. That's what the conspiracy theorists all chase after. They think something happened that they were trying to hide. The odd part is when that 30 seconds is stitched in seamlessly, you look at the motionless crowd at the bottom. It's called the motionless crowd. They don't move. Over 30 seconds in time, they don't move. That's really weird. They look very unanimated. And if you actually look at the photographs that people were taking on the other side of the street, the people are standing in a different order. That's a huge problem. That means that there were multiple takes. So we're looking at walk-on actors who are switching positions and that kind of stuff. We're actually looking at a composite. This is done in Hollywood all the time, where these people are, I believe these people were looking at the motionless crowd in the first 10 seconds of the film are basically cardboard, cut and pasted. And they're real people, but they're cut and pasted in. Let's see. Oh, there's so much to talk about here, but there's, I talked a lot about the crisis actors in here, and and how ridiculous the footage is that, like, as soon as the president is shot, you see like the Secret Service rushing in. You would think that like everybody there would be held off by the police, Secret Service, like we're going to interview everybody. Abraham Zapruder slips out and he's just gone. And the story we're told is that he was approached eventually by Secret Service and they asked him to go give over his footage, and he agreed to do it. It's like, no. First of all, when September 11th happened, they shut down all those cameras around the Pentagon, like, hundreds of cameras. Like, they wouldn't say, hey, can we have your camera? They would take his video camera and he wouldn't see it again. And you can see, like, in all the photography, how there's like 12 people standing there, just like just a few people. And Life magazine, they're there. They're always at these scenes. Life magazine had like the heads up when all these psyops were going to happen. And you see the was it the Norman family, whatever, they're posing, they're all afraid, huddling their children, and they're all, taking these pictures. And it goes on and on from there. You can actually see in the footage a lot of distortions. Everything in frame 313, you see, what is her name? Norma, Jean Hill. She's standing, like, her shadow's in the wrong place because everyone else's shadows line up and hers is out of place. You see that woman running in the background. She would be a giant she'd be 7 feet tall in reality, when she was really like 5 foot something. So they played with her. You see all sorts of distortions in the background because it's a composite image. You would get distortions if you're overlaying multiple prints. And of course, my favorite part is in frame 313 when the president's head explodes like a firecracker. That's going to make me sound really sadistic. I'm not saying I enjoy that, but from that moment on, if you slow the footage and you pay attention to it, President Kennedy looks like the T-1000 in Terminator 2, where it looks like some sort of like silver, almost like metallic blob in there, and it keeps shifting. And at one point, you could actually, like, it opens up his whole head and you could see through it. And that's the weirdest wound ever in history. When you look at his autopsy photo, his head is perfectly intact. It never opened up. So, you're looking at that going like, okay, they faked it. They faked his wound. They faked the footage, and they faked the people in there, and it's a fraud. So the next question is, well, if they faked all the footage, why would they do that? My next conclusion is, did the president die? And I mean, you talked to a lot I'm not a QAnon guy, but you talked to a lot of QAnon people, and they're all going to tell you that JFK Jr. is still alive, which I fully support. I think the whole thing was a hoax as well. And so people are going to say, well, no, why would they do that? Well, it's psychodrama. That it is. You talk to anyone who is alive at a conscious age in November of '63, we're coming up on Thanksgiving. Everyone remembers what the weather was like that day, just like it was on Pearl Harbor, just like it was for you and me on September 11th. Everyone remembers that day, and that day forever changed our lives. You take America's dearest presidents, and you basically destroy them in front of the country, and that's how you start shifting and playing on people's psyche and their subconscious and so on.
Okay, so again, the obvious questions: why would they do that? Why would he go along with that? Where has he been all this time? And then you mentioned the JFK Jr., which a lot of people don't know about that. I had always thought that they blew up his airplane, and that's what killed him and his family. But you're saying that was a hoax as well. Well, then the other questions is, why would he hoax that and go along with it with his family? And also, where have they been, and why hiding?
Those are really good questions. I think that there's multiple layers to this. Later on in the book, I talk about why I believe that the John Lennon assassination, which happened in December of 1980, the month I was born, by the way, that was a clear hoax as well. It actually, I talk about it because I talk a lot about the Paul is dead rumors, which inadvertently or opposite, I believe that Paul did not die, that it was actually that Paul is dead was a purposeful ceremony. I bring up John Lennon because I speculate that, and this is, I don't want to go off, we can talk about Lennon, I don't want to go off on tangent from Kennedy, but a lot of these MK Ultra people, I don't believe that they necessarily know. I mean, you could with the MK Ultra program, which I talk a great deal about in this book, they could actually, they basically create these, they split the psyche, right? They create these different personalities. I don't know how many they can create. I have no clue, but let's just say they have two for, there could be two of one person, and they could have person A deliver a package to Japan, get on a plane, go to Japan, come back. Then they activate person B, and they have no knowledge of person A did that, right? So if they were to assassinate person A, all you're left with is person B. So you get a guy like John Lennon, and there's a film that came out several years ago. It's called Let 'Em Be. It's a really trippy film. In fact, it was completely scrubbed and taken off the internet. You may still be able to buy copies like on eBay or something like that. But I think it hit a little bit too close to reality, and they had to pull it. It was a documentary about a guy named Mark Stacer, who has spent his entire life being a John Lennon impersonator. And all Mark Stacer wants to be is he wants to be John Lennon. He wants to sing John Lennon songs. In fact, he records brand new John Lennon material. He looks exactly like John Lennon. He's the same age. He has the same teeth, the same nose, the same eyes, the same ears, the same voice. He has the same everything. He is the biggest collector of John Lennon material, but he is Mark Stacer. And in fact, in the film, he plays a guy named Noel Snow. So he's basically, in the film, he's a John Lennon impersonator named Noel Snow. And the point of the film is that this person discovers that Noel Snow, who is played by Mark Stacer, is really the real John Lennon, that he never died. That's why it's called Let 'Em Be. And they actually had to pull this film. You can't find it anymore. And I speculate if basically Intel drugged this guy. Everybody knows Yoko Ono was, his handler. I mean, and if the John Lennon assassination, they really did assassinate John Lennon, the person, the mind, John Lennon, but the body still lived. He didn't really bleed blood, if you get my drift. I talked about the same thing about Elvis Presley. There's a guy named a preacher, Bob, what's his last name? Probably one of your viewers on here probably knows. And he actually preaches in Arkansas. And I'm with the people that believe he actually is Elvis Presley. And that all he can do is be obsessed with Elvis Presley. He preaches on YouTube. You can find him, and he just sings Elvis Presley songs. He sings exactly like Elvis Presley. He looks exactly like Elvis Presley, and he can only wish he could be Elvis Presley, but he's not. He's Preacher Bob. And so I do think that they kill a lot of these people off, and they don't know it. When it comes to the pedigree of someone like John Kennedy, I can't say. I can't say where he would go. Maybe Hitler was still alive in Argentina. He went down there to drink martinis with him. I don't know. But I really don't know. I don't know where he is. Sometimes we do find these people. Sometimes they do take on new identities. In my follow-up book, which you're getting ready to publish, It's Only Murder If They're Dead, the whole basis for the book is talking about the Charles Manson murders of 1969. And I go through all the details that I can to show that it's all an Intel psyop, it's all on television, it's all on Life magazine, it's all fake, it was all a stage, nobody died. And you see what you see in all these instances. I brought up like Timothy Leary earlier and Allen Ginsberg. I did that for a specific reason, because all these spooks you see swimming in the same circle. They all know each other. And you look at all the people that are in the Charles Manson story, the Beach Boys, Andy Warhol, and you can just go on and on and on and on. Jack Nicholson and Roman Polanski, all these people, and they're all attached to these other psyops. And what's interesting about Sharon Tate, and I conclude my second book on that, It's Only Murder If They're Dead, that there were two Tate sisters. There was Patty Tate and her younger sister Debbie Tate. Well, mysteriously, in around 1992, a new Tate sister popped up, Patty Tate. There's no record of her. She wasn't at the funeral. You do any search on her, I show how they actually the pictures that they claim is Patty Tate is actually their cousin. It's not really her. And what's really eerie is that Patty Tate shows up in 1992 living in the same house that Sharon Tate was murdered in. And you're like, well, that's weird. That's really, really weird. Now, and Patty Tate looks exactly like Sharon Tate. Same eyes, same ears, same nose, everything. And Patty Tate died in the year 2000. And you know, was Patty Tate, was she in on it, or did she really believe she was Patty Tate? I couldn't answer that question. I really don't know. I don't know all the complications of how the mind, how complicated it works, you know, the deep inner recesses of it, or if they're just pranksters and they're just hoaxing us. I couldn't, you know, I don't know.
You know, thinking about just hearing your overall narrative, and it makes me wonder about things like Jim Morrison and other people that, you know, disappeared with weird circumstances, and like, you know, because he was so idolized by so many people, and yet he's said to have just died in Paris, and then nobody ever saw his body, and many people speculate that, you know, he's still alive. And then the whole thing with Elvis Presley, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around why, you know, people would go along with this to disappear for the rest of their lives. Where would they go? And if they are in some kind of like MK Ultra program, you know, is there deep underground bases involved? Are they, you know, are they mentally sound and stable to where they are able to then, you know, disappear into other parts of the world, given ulterior, you know, personas, citizenships? I mean,
they do it in a number of ways, and in fact, one of the reasons they roll people back, I would imagine that no, Jim Morrison, you know, as you know, there was no body. There was only like two. I think his girlfriend Pam was one of them, and there was another like guy who saw. There was no body. He walked away from this, and I would imagine that the way these things go is that they often roll these people and shove them back in our face, and that's how the cognitive dissonance works on us. And we have to basically push against our own instincts in order to accept the official narrative, and that's what causes the wickedness to seep further down and the magic to do its work. So what's interesting about George, his father's name was George Morrison, Admiral George Stephen Morrison, and Jim Morrison. So his father was at the Gulf of Tonkin, and that was a hoax. It's pretty crazy to think that George. That I can't even say his name, Jim Morrison's father, we see pictures of Jim Morrison like a year before he emerged as a fully emerged sex god, as like this just kind of chubby boy with like, you know, boy's hair, and he's sitting on the deck of his admiral father's boat. And Morrison has stated that basically his entire catalog of music was written before he joined the Doors on the roof of a Venice apartment while he was tripping on LSD. And all these songs apparently came to him. He has no musical training. He couldn't read or write music. So you have to ask the question, how in the world do you get with other musicians and tell them what these songs are, assuming you just memorize them on the rooftop, and tell them how to play. Now, guys like Brian Wilson, who was a genius, he couldn't read or write music, but he could at least play. And same with Paul McCartney, but Jim Morrison couldn't. And so he drops a few albums. Almost all of these songs were written before the Doors were a thing. And then you see him just become like a kind of a fat poet, and he's uninterested in rock and roll, and then he disappears. But a lot of the people in the Laurel Canyon scene, when it exploded on 1964, you can go down the list of all these groups: Buffalo Springfield, the Byrds, and so on and so forth. All of their parents are Intel. They all come out of Intel. They're all getting pimped out by their parents. I highly suspect that David Crosby of the Byrds, later of CSNY, that he was actually being groomed as the original Charles Manson. And the first hippie, so Intel creates the hippie movement through the first guy, his name is Vito Pelikas, and he was there on Sunset Boulevard and Laurel Canyon. He would be with the Doors and the Byrds and all those groups. I suspect that he may have also been the other Charles Manson that they were grooming, and you could try to pinpoint who his handlers were. But Vito Pelikas had to, he was also, he has so many connections with the same Manson people, it's ridiculous. But around 1968, he had to split the scene because his Bobo, I think his name is Bobo, his like 2-year-old son fell through a skylight and died, tragic event. And he actually had to split the scene. And suddenly, boom, Charles Manson shows up, and you could line up Vito and David Crosby, but specifically Vito and Charlie together, and they're almost exactly the same in personality, philosophy, everything. It's just like they're reading out of a script. And that's one of the really hard things. This was one of the hard things because I love music. And, I know you're really big on obviously Serpent Seed research, which I love. And, I'm researching all as well. But you look at the sons of Cain, and in Genesis leading up to the flood, the civilization was run by Cain, by the sons of Cain, right? The music, the media, everything, right? Yeah. And it's the same today. It's no different. The sons of Cain are running everything, and it's all an illusion, and they're all, shoving this down our throats. And of course, everybody who's listening to this will have to decide what to do with that knowledge themselves. Yeah. So.
Okay, like looking even at that first book of Adam and Eve, we see that it is the children of Cain that are led to create musical instruments, weapons of war. They're the artificers. They're also the ones that set up taverns, bars, and places of congregation where brothels and partying and the whole musical scene and alcohol and liquor and all of that is all brought together to corrupt humanity and lead people into sin and to cause them to fall away into abomination. That this is something that has been ongoing, and I've always heard, haven't looked into it in great detail, about the CIA being involved with, the whole hippie movement and experience, Timothy Leary, the LSD, and, how all that was also gotten out and started to be distributed by the, the different bands, the groups, San Francisco, all of the music, as far as the whole break away from normality and the whole change, free love and anti-war and all these themes and concepts, and just the opening up of consciousness that this was funded and manipulated and utilized by the CIA, that they were even doing doing all these experiments on individuals, military, even people in high level MK Ultra, and also because a lot of the people that were part of that were families and children that were part of intelligence groups and movements.
Absolutely. They're
Um,
all these people are connected, all of them. And you just mentioned like Timothy Leary. Well, the beatniks, the original beatniks were clearly intel guys being recruited out of the same place, New York City. In fact, I think that the two main psyop cities are New York and San Francisco. And of course, San Francisco, you get into mud flood research, and that, I mean, San Francisco is crazy.
right.
But a great example of that, you could just look this up on the Intelnet. Google basically CIA and artwork, and this has all come out that you get a guy like, which I talk about in the book, but you get a guy like Jackson Pollock, famous in the 50s, and his paintings are mesmerizing. He does these wall-sized paintings where it's just like, paint like being dripped onto the canvas and splattered and that kind of stuff. And the CIA was creating this artwork. They will tell you that they were trying to, now nobody knew that at the time, and they'll tell you, well, the purpose was we were in a Cold War and we're trying to compete against Russia. And it's like, how in the world are you going to, if you're going to try to compete against Russia, why not start Baroque schools, right? Like some like serious classical art to really compete with the Soviets. But what they were trying to do is the CIA was actually destroying art. They were controlling everything. So the way they would do this is, so basically, if you ever go into a modern contemporary museum, like in Chicago or wherever, and you stand there with your hand on your chin, and you go, I could do that. It's because they created something where, they basically taken a form and they wanted to scrub out all morality, make it morally ambiguous. And the way they would do this is that the CIA would actually, it would just be funneling money. They would create these fun hedge groups and others. They would go to these art shows and they would put millions of dollars into these pieces, into Jackson Pollock and others. And you could still see where some of these art pieces are selling for $20 million and so on and so forth. Well, who's paying for that? The CIA is. So we go, oh, wow, that's amazing that someone would paint something and be worth so much money. No, the only reason we think it's valuable is because the government is telling us you will think that's valuable. This is what we're going to shove down your throat. They control the music industry, they control Hollywood, they control everything. And this is why I gave the analogy of the blob earlier, because it's just, that's what it is. It's just consumed everything. And when it's really freeing when you can get to the point where you say, you know what, I'm under no obligation to believe the official narrative. One of the ways, I'm surprised cancel culture hasn't canceled me out yet. I'm waiting for that to happen. It'll be a badge of honor when it happens. But one of the ways I tell people you can help you discern between truth and fiction in the television is that if you turn on the local news at 5 o'clock, you're still going to get a lot of lies in there, but you'll see things like some tragic stories, like a local girl died and was killed by a drunk driver, a 2-year-old drowned in a pool, a black man was shot or something like that. And these stories will pop up 5 o'clock, be over by 6. You'll never hear about them again. It's over. It was just local. They just gave you stuff from your neighborhood. But when you see every single news network jumping on and saying a cop named Chauvin stepped on a black man's neck for, was it 8 minutes and 46 seconds? Basically, they're just giving you intel signature right there. You can be certain that you are watching an intel psyop in the making, because the media is only interested in investing in the intelligence community, in the script. And then, of course, everything after that, we were all there for, everyone brings us out. They tell us to go home for COVID, and they bring us out of our homes to go destroy statues and burn down like a Burger King or something like that. And then we got to go back in our homes again. And, you could just see how easily they control the narrative, and they make everyone who went out and did that feel like it was their idea to begin with. That's what's so terrifying of how indoctrinated this world truly is, and how liberating it is to finally come to the realization that this is we're living in the cities of Cain, and they're running everything.
Well, there's so many different stories that come to mind. as well, like the whole theme, well, Alex Jones and how he's also from an intelligence family, uh, just suddenly pops up on the scene, starts speaking about 9/11, and then you have the true author of the Pale Horse. Um, why can't I remember his name right now? But he was also military intelligence.
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about. Why can't I remember the name? Right
I know the book. Yeah, I do know who you're talking about.
Okay, and people in the chat room, please tell me who I'm talking about. Everybody knows him. He was an actual person that was bringing forth truth, but they ended up killing him and then replacing him with Alex Jones, who I believe is establishment, and that he has been utilized to control the narrative. But anyways, then the whole
I fully agree with that. Yes.
And then we see that he is discredited on the whole topic of the Sandy Hook and actors, crisis actors, and that nobody was killed, and that this whole town was organized intelligence community families that have been utilized in other crises and other stories. And so when all that came out, he was just made to look like a complete idiot, a complete fool. And yet this is the truth of what's going on behind the scenes, and that this kind of theme is happening over and over and over, where we see in the media propaganda and stories that are completely contrived, and that this is something that's been going back. We're talking about the Gulf of Tonkin and how that never even happened, and then you look at in World War II, Pearl Harbor, and how they allowed that to happen, and that so many American lives and the whole fleet there in the Pacific Fleet was allowed to be destroyed, just so that we could guarantee, just so that the elites and Franklin Roosevelt could guarantee our entrance into the war. And yet people, if you tell them this, it absolutely blows their mind. And you were talking about the Titanic, and I'm not exactly sure as to what you were declaring, but I looked into that story as well, and from what I learned, is that there was another ship called the Olympia
Yes.
that was that was damaged, and that they wanted to destroy it in order to collect the insurance, and also that the people that were against the central banks, the Guggenheims, the Arbors, the Warburgs, not the Warburgs, but Jacob Astor, these people that were very wealthy, very rich, and that were against the formation of a Federal Reserve central bank here in America, they were all happened to be on this ship as well. And whether it went down or disappeared, they were taken out as opposition. And so, these are things in that part of the story that most people have never heard about or examined, and yet, it gives us a whole nother theme of consideration when looking at even this one story. But it seems like we never get the straight story about what's happening, and everything is twisted and turned, and propaganda is always at the forefront of bringing forth in perspective what they want us to believe. All right, hold on. We'll be right back. We're at break. That was quick. We'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com. Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
In a world where we are ridiculed for questioning mainstream narrative, it can feel like we are studying alone. So together with you, Sacred Word Publishing classes has begun. Are you interested in biblical Hebrew, the Nokian calendar, extra biblical texts, or other esoteric topics? Join any class for free. Or do you have research you'd like to share with fellow truth seekers? We'd love to help you set up a class. As students, we also have an opportunity today. We'll be happy to study with you at swpclass.com. Email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with your class ideas, and we look forward to learning with you. See you in class. Every day, questions arise.
Are the stories in the Bible true?
What if I told you that there are hundreds of confirming witnesses,
which give intricate detail to the stories in the Bible?
Have you ever found yourself deep in the rabbit hole with questions that no one seemed to have the answers to? Check out swpcalendar.com to see when to join us next for our Ask Me Anything series with author and researcher Zen Garcia, as he sheds light on the mysteries which have us all searching together. Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for the second hour. That went by really quickly, but I do want to address a couple of the questions and commentary there in the chat room. First, I'd like to say that, the author of the Pale Rider, Behold a Pale Rider, is William Cooper. And let me state that even though William Cooper, yes, was Navy military intelligence, I believe that he was a person that was really blowing the whistle and making us, America, and the world knowledgeable on secret societies and the inner workings of the establishment, and that he was working not with, but actively against and trying to expose Alex Jones and his sudden arrival upon the scene. And I believe that that's one of the reasons why he was targeted and killed by the local sheriff there, and that he was taken out in order to silence him. And so I do believe that, William Cooper was working for, as far as, the kingdom and bringing truth to the people. But, and I'm going to go to you here in just a short bit, Noel. But I did want to say that, I do think that a lot of things are controlled, but that there are a lot of people like myself. I just decided at some point to start speaking out and start sharing the things that I was coming to knowledge on, as far as the journey to awakening. And I think that this is similar for a lot of us, in that we all, those that do decide to utilize their voices and utilize their abilities to, speak truth to power and to stand for the kingdom. And that a lot of people, just declared that they were going to do it and began to create radio broadcasts, programs, write books, whatever. And that, there are a lot of true voices out there. But go ahead, Noel. Let me turn it over to you.
I fully agree with you on that, and I've never looked into. I didn't realize that William Cooper was the guy that is he the guy that exposed Alex Jones as Bill Hicks, or I didn't know that. But I would like to say that because I do believe that whistleblowers do jump off bridges, that that I have never been suicidal. Just so everybody knows, it's on. A lot of the times when we're looking into these psyops, we kind of have to look at a psyop within a psyop within a psyop. Now, I know that there's a lot of different views on what just happened with COVID-19. I have on my website, on the Unexpected Cosmology, which will be put into volumes, into books, on why the germ theory is a hoax. AIDS is a hoax. A virus is a dead thing. I cannot go chew, and a dead virus, goes into your body through your nose, your mouth, or your ear, or whatever, and through your eye, and then it starts replicating and you get sick. That's not how it actually works. And so when, and there's, So when COVID started coming out, and there was, everyone recalls, there was all the conspiracy theories about the lab, Wuhan, China. And in fact, I was speaking with, I'll just go ahead. I was speaking with Paul on the plane on the phone when all that happened. And that's when there was like video footage coming out of Wuhan, like of all those people falling over dead. It was clearly faked. And there was actually one video footage of, you actually saw, it might've been the director, it was a cameraman and a crew, and they were racing these people through a hospital room, and they said cut, and they went back and did it again. It was all faked. And So now when you see that now even the mainstream media is jumping onto their this is a classic Intel technique called gaslighting. And now that they're all jumping on, even the CDC apparently is saying, yeah, maybe it really did spread from Wuhan, China. For me, that is further proof that they're basically creating a conspiracy and sending you down sending us naughty hounds down the wrong trail. Like I said earlier, with the second shooter and so on and so forth. And I'm hearing a lot of beeping. I just want to make sure I'm still good.
Yeah. Do you have the show open? Because I'm getting feedback from your.
Okay.
Close it.
Am I still on, Zen?
Yeah, you are. But I don't know if you have the website or the show.
As long as you can still hear me. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear.
All right.
Yeah.
Am I the only one hearing that?
Yeah, I'm not hearing it anymore, but we were hearing some loud feedback from your side.
Do I need to come back again?
No, because we're not hearing anything anymore. So it should be good. Whatever you're hearing, we're not hearing it. So.
Okay. All right. So I'm the only one hearing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, going back to like one of the things that's really helpful in understanding all this is a phrase called the illusion of choice. And the media only gives us the media only gives us an illusion. They only give us like so many options. They don't necessarily lead us in the truth. A good example of the illusion of choice is the movie The Wizard of Oz. And Dorothy goes on a quest to destroy the Wicked Witch of the West. She's brought in by the Witch of the South. And the irony here is that they're both witches, right? It's all magic. It's all the same thing. It's just the white hand and the white and the black, the left and the right approach. But I did want to address this is on my website, and I've written 3 articles on this. People are free to look at it. Is the reason I believe and conclude that the Titanic never even sank. All right, this is the kind of control the media has. I mean, classic psychodrama that they have. Our hearts will go on. They've all drawn us into this, and those poor bankers, those poor rich, wealthy, elite bankers that all went down. And first of all, you have the media up in Canada stating that the Titanic went in safely to Nova Scotia. Oops. On the day it sank, you have New York newspapers coming out with full spread stories on all the stories of the people that died. It's like, how in the world did they even know who died by that point? It was only a third filled. Most people don't know that. The coordinates of where the Titanic sank, the reason it took so long to find the Titanic, people don't know this, is that the Titanic was never there. People went looking for it. It wasn't there. So they had to create a new fictional location where it sank, and it was discovered in the 80s, and it became a UNESCO site, which is a huge red flag. Well, the guy who discovered the Titanic, when you look at the original footage, it actually looks to me like the Titanic was a model in a lake. It is so many miles underwater. It should be complete darkness, completely black, like just a sackcloth of space down there. And yet it's very well lit. It shouldn't be that well lit. And now we know that deep down should be teeming with life, like glowing shrimp and all sorts of stuff. There's nothing. In fact, I think it was the Discovery Channel. They did a Titanic footage, and they actually put a CG shrimp in, and many people caught that because they realized they were trying to fix it. So the reason I think that the Titanic split in half is, keep in mind, there is not one witness who ever said they saw the Titanic split in half. The first time we see that is in the Titanic movie with James Cameron. I kind of think that in the 80s, when they did their mock-up, kind of like the moon landing, when they did their fake Titanic footage, they only built half a scale model. So they came up with the story that it split in two and the other half completely decayed. Now, this is where the story gets a little very humorous, because they talk about all the decay that has happened, and but then they find like a little girl's leather shoes down there that somehow didn't get completely dissolved by the salt water. But UNESCO and the scientists and so on. Oh yeah, also our favorite explorer Buzz Aldrin actually took a dive to the Titanic. He also went to the South Pole. So basically, I figure like anytime they need to sell a fictional location, they bring in Buzz Aldrin. He's the man to do that. Well, they've discovered, and I can't pronounce it, you could look it up, or anyone could look it up. They actually discovered a new bacteria. It's kind of like a Titanic something bacteria. It's a super bacteria that is eating the Titanic. And they say that within 10 years, it's going to be completely gone. Oh, how sad. So, and of course, because it's UNESCO site, nobody can go look at it. It's protected because they say if you go down there in your submarine, that it's going to harm it, and they want to keep it alive for preserved for another 10 to 20 years or whatever how long. So that's why I'm saying that it just has all the markings of like, okay, they're yanking our chain here. I don't think that there's anything really down there at the bottom of the water. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay, a couple other things, and we are still hearing some feedback from your side, so. Maybe
from my side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's when I speak, it seems to come through your mic, and I don't know why that is, but
okay.
A couple other things that I wanted to bring attention to is the whole Challenger, with the Challenger explosion, and how so many people have traced back and shown that all of those people that supposedly had died in that accident are currently still alive and living, alternative lives. That some are as teachers or whatever, but they are in the public arena. And it's been shown to be the same people with different names, but they all look the same, just older. And so that this was another hoax and another, something for whatever reason, maybe to create more of a budget, because it seems like, after the Oklahoma City bombing, that this was in similarity, it increased the budget for what later became Homeland Security, and so this kind of thing has been repeated over and over. Even after 9/11, you had a huge increase in the budget for what became Homeland Security, and so can you comment on all that?
Yeah, the Challenger is, and it kind of maybe even answers the question from earlier, and that's a really good example that you have all these people from the Challenger that are ironically, they're all teachers. Like, people should really let that one sink in. They're educators. And they're also in broad daylight. Like, nobody, for all I know, the Flat Earth movement has been going on for 6 years now. And I remember that story broke. I don't know when it really broke with the Challenger. It was around 2014, 15, really. And for all I know, they're still educators and they're not being questioned. And students are probably all laughing it up. And they put these people, the answer, where do these people go? They just become your neighbors. Nobody questions this because it doesn't matter how much they look like somebody. The media tells us they're dead. They must be dead. This must be someone who looks just like them, acts just like them, draws illustrations for their company that happen to look just like the Challenger exploding, but that's all a coincidence. So I guess the bigger question that I have that is not answered is, do those people actually know? That's the big question. And I can't answer that. Do those astronauts know that they're the ones that blew up?
Or in some case, MK Ultra still?
Yeah, once you're MK Ultra, you're really always MK Ultra. And that's what I talk about, that if they create a the thing is with MK Ultra is that we often, if a person is MK Ultra, if they're a slave, they're actually put into their own self-contained psychodrama where they have to try to destroy and beat their handler. They have to conquer their handler. And if they destroy their handler, their handler actually wins, right? Well, the thing is with the MK Ultra program is that if you have multiple personalities, and again, I don't understand the deep recesses of the mind, but you can murder a created character, and that person is dead. So this is where I went back to like John Lennon and Elvis Presley and those kind of people. I would assume that if Jim Morrison, he's probably dead by now, but he may still be alive. I don't know. But I would assume that at some point, somebody's going to dig up some sort of like VHS copy that was recorded in the 1990s about some kind of fat, overweight guy up in Seattle that has been going to some poetry reading night every night for the last 15 years, and all the staff know him, and he's obsessed with Jim Morrison, and all he can do is recite Jim Morrison poetry and sing his songs, and he looks like Jim Morrison, but Santa Claus, right? So they're gonna, they'll push that out there, into our faces, and they typically always do that at some point. I was going to talk about, you look at the MK Ultra program, though, is I believe for the most part that the MK Ultra program, it was pushed out by Intel. They wanted us to know about it conveniently when they shut it down, of course, too. And a lot of these people in it, I believe, are actually actors. For example, I don't believe Jim Jones or Jonestown ever happened. I believe it was a complete hoax. There was a reason Jonestown wasn't in New Mexico. It was in a different country in the jungle because it was the only place they could control it on a stage from the media. But you get a guy like Colonel Lewis West, and I talk about him in The Hidden Hand of Camelot. Colonel Lewis West he worked with Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who basically ran the MK Ultra program. And Lewis West shows up in the lives of Jack Ruby. He's in his prison cell. He's working with Patty Hearst. He's in the Jim Jones case. He's working with Sirhan, the guy who emerged from a tray stacker and shot Bobby Kennedy when Life magazine just so happened to be there to photograph it. Life magazine is like always there, by the way. And, my contention is that these are all hoaxes. I conclude that if the JFK assassination was a hoax, Bobby Kennedy couldn't have been laying there in his own blood and been like, oh no, we faked my brothers and this one is legit. So a lot of the greater emphasis of the MK Ultra program is that we're the ones that are being initiated into it. We're the ones that are being programmed. It wasn't so much a Manchurian candidate, because most of the Manchurian candidates, in my opinion, are fake. They're just actors. And the broader implications is they were trying to figure out how can we indoctrinate, lie, and lead people down these false narratives and make them the MK Ultra zombies. Anyone who's just lived through 2020 can look around and go I think there's I want to be like, I don't want to just put people down, but there's a lot of zombies out there. And, we all know it. So people are really, really deeply indoctrinated into this lie.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are, just going through life half asleep and not really paying attention. And now with all the new technology and the internet available at your hands through the phone, and now they're trying to even do sunglasses and Google glasses and all of that, and it's just distracting people and keeps them from being conscious of what's going on at all. But certainly, again, the whole theme of all the world's a stage. Do you think that part of the agenda is just to keep lies mitigated and to keep truth unsettled and uncertain, and that they just want people to, they're creating the whole theme of, conspiracy theorists and they're creating, as far as the knowledge base and the reality, for people that are introspective, even with the Matrix movies and, that whole theme coming out, they're creating a class of people that is more investigative and more open to truth, but yet they're muddling it up, and they're also, creating distortion so that, who knows what is truth, really, when it comes down to it.
Well, you actually really, you bring up a really good point. And let me see if I could find, I don't want to leave you hanging here. Let's see if I could find this quote real quick from, I'm almost there.
You're fine.
Okay, so a lot of people know Michael A. Hoffman. He wrote a book called Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. This is a quote he puts in his book from a British intelligence wing of cryptocurrency, in which Hoffman quotes, "This demonstrates one of our simpler methods. Realizing that our activities will sooner or later come to light, we structure our activities so that as conspiracy researchers unravel them, they will release information into the public consciousness in such a way that it mirrors our initiatory procedure. In this way, the more we are investigated, the more masses of people are psychologically processed by the very people who seek to expose us." Now, he goes on, but the point here is that, and this is the downer to jobs like for you and for me, is that in a way, we're actually working for the bad guys. And they're actually, what we see is that Intel is actually feeding these conspiratorial stuff. We pick up the info, we start passing it along, and what we're actually doing is we are actually processing people. We're actually, from a biblical standpoint, you could almost say we're damning them, because what we're doing is we're feeding them the truth, and they're rejecting it, and we are further pushing them further and further into the abyss. You'll see everywhere right now, and one of the ways you can tell that they're really pushing for a big reboot right now is you see all the occultist imagery in the movies and the media everywhere, right? Like the one eye and stuff, it's everywhere. The reason they're doing that is they're initiating everybody. And so as we tell people and pass this along, obviously our hope is to bring people to the truth of Scripture, of the gospel, of the Savior. But it works the same way biblically, that as people reject it, their heart hardens more and more. And so it's an initiation process, all of this. They're not concerned. You take something like the Flat Earth movement, for example. The Flat Earth movement is what really woke me up and it got me excited. Before that, like 9/11 didn't really get me excited. Flat Earth movement did. And they're not, the governments, the world governments, the New World Order, Intel, they're not so concerned about a very small minority of people who believe the earth is flat or that it's not a spinning globe. They're not really concerned about us. We're the pawns. We're actually doing the dirty work for the bad guys. And if you look what happened in 2015, NASA it wasn't like nobody was into it. Like the only people that were watching the ISS were living in like a basement, and they would study it or whatever. But something happens after the Flat Earth movement. I go outside now, and I go outside. I see everywhere. I see people wearing NASA T-shirts. They're really proud. They like double down on it. And what it has done is that they created, and excuse my language here, flat-tards. That's what we are to the rest of the world. Right. They've created this army of flat-tards in order to reinvigorate the NASA program. And isn't it interesting right now that you have Bezos and Bronson, who are these white CEOs who are duking it out to make it into space. I'm going, wait a second here. didn't we already do this in the 1950s? Like, we're not even talking the Apollo missions. We're talking, we got white guys, the Soviets and the Americans were duking out to get a guy up into space in the 50s. Like by 57 was Sputnik. The Mercury missions were by 1960. And it's like a soft reboot. Like, has everybody forgotten that we already accomplished this 70 years ago? But whatever, I just went off on a tirade, but you can totally see how they basically we were in their control all along. I don't think it ever got out of control. And they're pushing this stuff out, and they're using it to lead humanity to the next step of initiation of indoctrination. Mm-hmm. The only enjoyment or hope I have in this is that I can save those, the few that I can. And I think that's all of our hope, is to wake the elect up to the realities of the world around us, that the truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that the next aspect, and we're seeing it all play out, is the whole theme is that the ancient aliens are creators, and that, they knew about the heliocentric worldview, and that the Earth was part of a solar system going back 6,000 years. And what people don't realize is that this is the foundation of the propaganda. Even way back then, it was being established in order to prepare us for the times that we are in now. And that thought, that imagination is absolutely mind-blowing, because why would they lie going that far back? And why would they risk blowing their own cover with regard to, the foundation of this revelation, this truth, according to them? But for those of us that really do know and understand the truth, we know that, they're not from out there. They've been here with us since the beginning. They were here before even we were cast out of the heavens and banished to the earth, and locked to this time-space dimensionality, and that judgment is coming. They know that they have but a short time, and so the agenda is accelerating. But still, the world does not understand that. They still buy into the whole evolutionary theme that we evolved to monkeys, or that the space aliens, the extraterrestrials, stepped in a long time ago, jumped the gun on evolution, and that's why we find ourselves, in this strange and bewildering place, that it was all them, and yet, the whole theme of God, the inerrancy of the Bible, the truth of the word of the Creator, all that is, they create a speck of doubt, and the whole narrative, everything is thrown out, and people no longer believe, but even make fun of those of us that accept the word of God, and that study and understand the truth of it. We are ridiculed, made fun of, and antagonized as flat-tards, idiots, whatever, tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists. That's where we are.
Yeah. I rarely can sit down with I guess I'm just so far gone. I mean, I'm pretty far gone, but it's hard for me to even sit down with, for me, when I read scripture, it is it's alive. It's a living document. I get so excited reading it. And I've said this before to you, Zen, you've been really instrumental to me of getting me excited to read all these extra biblical books. And every time I discover that there's another one that, on the shelf that I haven't heard about before, I just rush out there and I get in and I read it. And it all of it is, it continues to just make, the more I read of it, it just makes scripture clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer. And it just, answers so many questions. And it's hard for me to sit down with any, I guess, Christian today and that they actually believe any of it. They go through I don't know what it is to them, but yeah.
I appreciate you saying that, brother, because that's the way that I feel when I discover a new text or a new manuscript, or with the Thracian Chronicles and all that material coming forward. It just excites me to have more of the truth and more of the pieces of the puzzle, and to be able to share that with the world. And so I'm so grateful when I find or come across an individual like yourself that is also a seeker of truth, one of those searching for lost paradise, and that is excited about the discovery and the Spirit being poured out on all flesh. That Enoch wrote about this remote and distant generation, that we would be the ones that sought out and that would come to understand the revelation of his word. The whole, as far as the messianic, the truth of the coming of the Son of Man, and how that's all documented, the first and second, the end of days, the fig tree generation, all these themes, because we are so privileged to be alive during this time and to have all this knowledge coming to light for us. And yet so many, they've locked themselves into this cage where they'll only accept and believe in the truth of God's word as long as it's contained in 66 books and nothing else, and everything else is excluded and condemned, and without even consideration. They've never even investigated, examined, read, studied, looked at this material. And when you do, so much of the truth comes forward in so many ways that the underlying real truth of how everything is connected, as far as the conspiratorial, the biblical, the prophetic, the mythological, the arcane, historical, the mysteries, all of that comes together in fusion that just really, when you consider it's the greatest story never told, never understood, never, but we are getting pieces of all that now, and it's absolutely mind-blowing when you really consider it. And it's so sad that most of the world is opposed to it and wants nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I was somehow every time I'm on the radio with you, it always comes back to my upbringing. But I was raised, as you probably know, and I've said this before on air, that I was raised in a sola scriptura household, and it was all contained, of course, within 66 canon, and it's great. If scripture says something, that it's true, and that's a true statement. But the worldview that I was raised in, and this was, I think that a guy like me has had to push through far more indoctrination than a lot of the people coming into the truther movement and discovering scripture and getting excited about, because I was raised in this worldview in the multiple churches I went to, that all this other stuff that you're talking about, Zen, it's all a test. It's there to deceive us. It's there to pull us away from the truth. And so when I first came into this and I started discovering truth, I was looking at all this stuff going like, what in the world is this? This is all a test to pull me away from the truth, right? And finally it got to the point when my wife and I, we tried for years to make our relationship work in the church. And finally, when we discovered, to my joy, that that Yahuwah's instructions in righteousness, his law, is not just intended for the Yehudim. It's intended for all of humanity, for the sojourner, for those who are in the camp, in the congregation. And we led the church in order to pursue the Father. And as we're sitting at home every Sabbath and just reading these texts for ourselves, we're learning more, just like we learned more our first year than an entire lifetime. And we realize, oh my goodness, like these organizations are set up to keep you from the truth.
Yes.
To keep you in this self-contained box where you feel like you have the truth, but it's actually very cleverly leading you away. I mean, you look at Christianity today; it's all over in the media that they can't even identify. There's no definition of an evangelical Christian anymore. They're in such turmoil that it's morally ambiguous, and it's all by design, of course.
Right. That was so very well said, brother. And, I really applaud you and your wife for taking time, because I think that we are being called out of the organized religions, and that most of what is mainstream churchianity is idolatrous anyways, and caught up in the deceptions and the illusions that have been set up as obstacle to really lock us into a mindset that, as you said, leads us away from truth, and as far as blocks us from even considering truth as it is so hugely available out there in all of the ancient manuscripts that are coming to light and that are being brought forth by so many groups of people, so many individuals standing up for the kingdom and sharing what has been hidden, forgotten, forbidden for so very long, and even at the pretense of being judged and ridiculed and made fun of and reputations destroyed. And it doesn't matter. What matters is standing for the kingdom and standing for the truth of God's word and the gospel. And it's a beautiful thing to see so many people aligning themselves with truth, even at the expense of, the condemnation, the ridicule, that it doesn't matter anymore, that they're not afraid of being made fun of or being ostracized, being made the black sheep of a community or, whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is truth and standing for it. And that's an awesome thing to see in this time, in this day.
Well, Zen, you're my might as well have like a bro hugging fest here or something. You really are. I think I've told you this before, but you are my role model. I think I told you that at the conference you had in last September 11th. And you, of all the people in the Truther movement, you've been my role model because I have observed. So, I mean, I know what it's like for a room to turn on you. Like, I've been in this for several years now. I'm sticking my neck out there. I'm writing all this stuff. I have people turn really, like I was like, oh, that was fast. Didn't, I was expecting 10 minutes later, but not this fast. And, but what I've observed is that you're one of those guys that you keep in your lane and you just focus on your research and just keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. And so that's what I have tried to model myself after too. I mean, I know like a guy like you and me, if we were to sit down together, we're probably going to agree on a huge chunk of stuff, probably like 90% of our stuff we're going to agree on. And then we're going to have these things where we just sorry, we don't agree on this. That's just the way it is. One of my best friends is Adam Fink from Parable of the Vineyard. We've been friends for I first met him when he was had I don't know, 1,000 subscribers or less, like maybe 300 or something. And, nobody knew who he was and stuff. And it's the same thing. We agree on tons of stuff. And then there's just a few things where it's like Adam and I sorry, we can't agree on that. But I just, that's one thing I appreciate about you, that you can just, as people just keep coming at you and coming at you and coming at you, you just keep at it. And finally those people go away. It's amazing. Yeah, then somebody else always shows up. They see they see the vacancy. They're like, wait a second, nobody's attacking this guy. I'll step in. But then they get bored. They get bored after like 6 weeks of it, and then they move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always somebody to step in to replace the detractors and to, pick up that role. But yeah, I love Adam as well. I spoke with him earlier today. He's a very kind brother, and I think that he is also a big part of the real truth movement as far as, helping others to come to discernment on so much that has been hidden and, again, lost, forgotten, forbidden, as you are. And it's a great blessing to see so many people and to be able to stand as a community with so many individuals that, even at one time had been in opposition to a lot of what I say, even as my good friend Rob Skiba, he's come to discernment on a lot of things that were controversial, of course. And he, like you, was, raised pastor's son and, in the community and very knowledgeable and closed off to truth from all these other sources. But it is nice to see people opening themselves and really, taking into consideration new possibility. That's a beautiful thing. But we are getting close to the end of the show, brother. And so I want to give you a chance to, tell people your website, contact information, where they can go to support your work. Of course, you can find all of Noel's books at sacredwordpublishing.com. But anything else that you'd like to share, final commentary, all of that as well.
Yeah, last plug of the night. All right, so my website, of course, is The Unexpected Cosmology. I consider it an online magazine. I bring out new articles every Friday, and these are really in-depth articles. They'll be like 30 pages, some of these. I mean, they're really going through just detail to show you all the hoaxes. I bring in guest writers all the time. So if someone wants to publish on The Unexpected Cosmology, you want to talk about truther stuff, you want to talk about Torah, you want to talk about sacred books, come talk to me. You can find me at The Unexpected Cosmology. I love to publish guest writers, give all sorts of people a chance at this. And my project, of course, the series, Unexpected Cosmology, will be a series of books being, we got the first one out, another one coming out soon, right, Zen? And then I'll have, hopefully by the end of the summer, 2 more ready. And I'm already working on several others. And this is my life project. And it's going to be this huge volume of just books, just taking us through history and showing us how the children of Cain are still running the show today.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Also, every Tuesday night on my, I have a Discord channel, The Unexpected Cosmology, which you can find that link on my website. Every Tuesday night we're going through the Targum. Right now we're going through the Genesis Targum, and week by week we go through 1 to 2 chapters and we just talk about it. We compare notes. And people really love that. So if anyone wants to come check that out, we'll also probably be going through the Hebrew Gospels now that they're finally released. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I don't think Luke is released yet, but we'll probably be going through John very soon. I'm really excited to go through the Hebrew Gospel. So just come by, say hi, and I love speaking with people.
That's amazing. And I, again, applaud you and your community for going through the Targum. I think that is actually life-changing when people do that and consider that material. And you said every Tuesday night
every Tuesday night, every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. People come into the room. Some just can throw in their comments, whatever. I'll just read through the Targum. We go over it verse by verse. We compare it to the Masoretic, to the LXX. We compare it to Jasher, the writings of Abraham.
Awesome.
Whatever I'll talk about. I talked about Second Enoch recently, but we'll talk about a lot of different texts and just how they all click and compare. And I was talking about the Book of the Bee and Second Adam and Eve this last Tuesday night. Also, the Lost Book of King Og. And so I try to take us through as many texts as we can, but the Targum is what we're focusing on right now.
That sounds amazing, brother. And I love that we did that same thing. We have a Discord every Saturday where we start at 7, go through 9 as well. And we read, I think, 35 weeks on the Targum and have gone through many of the collections of the extra biblical books that are available at Sacred Word Publishing, the Infancy Gospels, the end time narratives, apocalypses, so much material. But yeah, there's a lot to consider, and it's awesome to see you and Adam at the Parable of the Vineyard, and so many other people, even Rob, in doing the virtual house church now, that he and Jake Grant and others are incorporating the Targum into their studies. And just it's mind-blowing how much extra detail comes to light just from reading the Targum and to studying it. And then, again, how you mentioned it ties to all of these other books and all this other material. Absolutely fascinating. And so, yeah, I think everybody should read and study the Targum, and that it will bless them without a doubt. But with regard to your books and the series, what do you glean is the important aspect of all the information that you're bringing forth in the Hidden Hand of Camelot? And again, with regard to the theme and the title for that, if you would make mention, quickly of why you chose, and the bigger aspect of a more profound introspection as to the title and its meaning.
Well, okay, so the Hidden Hand of Camelot. So as everyone knows Camelot refers us back to the John F. Kennedy administration, which was it was his wife, Jackie, that brought up in an interview within like 4 days of his death and called it Camelot. Apparently, Kennedy really liked that Broadway play. But the Hidden Hand refers to magic, hence, or specifically psychodrama, and how there's a hidden hand behind everything around us that is creating a false reality. That this false reality is causing us to act in a certain way, to mold us into a certain thinking, into the beast image. And that's their goal, generation after generation, is to enslave us through magic. As I pointed out, with Jezebel ruled her kingdom through magic. And so with this series and the entire anthology, it's just continually just show people how to look at the official narrative and see how they're lying to us. And pretty soon you just start, hopefully, everyone can start picking it apart themselves. And so when these next big psyops happen, whatever the next big thing is, people can go, that's fake. When those aliens land or whatever's going to happen, be like, that's fake. Personally, I kind of suspect that when the aliens do arrive, that they won't be the real, even angelic beings, because as I point out with psychodrama, that the fakeness is important, and actually giving, and it's almost like they make some of this fake on purpose just to make you deny it. That's really important, to make you deny your own observations, that you would go to the shoreline and see sea level and a flat horizon and say, that's a globe. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Or that the earth is spinning at 1,037 miles an hour, faster than the speed of sound or a bullet shot from a gun. It's absolutely ludicrous. And
meanwhile, you're on an airplane. They do that all on purpose. They make you deny reality on purpose. Yeah. It's all Orwellian language and everything.
Right. And how they have on, the United Nations flag, the seat of world government, the azimuth, the equidistant projection map, and the Earth as it's situated, as close in my mind, with regard to circling around the North Pole, and the North Pole being the center of the plane, and everything then extending out towards the edges of, what is basically the edges of the world as it's described by the scriptures. But yeah, the truth of biblical cosmology is right there, and yet they laugh at and make fun of all of us and flash their gang signs and their hand signs.
Yeah, and that's classic gaslighting technique, right? They give you the truth and then mock you for believing it.
Right.
They do that all the time.
Yes. Yeah, so funny. Yeah, we got 3 minutes remaining, brother, and so anything else? Oh, why don't you speak about the next book in the series? Because we do have the PDF and all that available. We'll just have to add the covers, and it will be published.
After the Hidden Hand of Camelot is a book called It's Only Murder If They're Dead. I kind of like PI type novel titles, and it finishes the 1960s. Basically, it takes everything that I talked about in Camelot, and it ends the 60s with like the Manson murders and showing you how that's all an intel psyop. It was all faked, and then, of course, I'm finishing 2 more books. One is on the 1940s and the other is on the 1950s. So it's going to have a nice, clean package there. And and the 40s one really focuses mostly on the atomic bomb hoax. I get into Israel a lot. The 50s, it's going to be called They Kept Not Their First Estate. Nice biblical title. And it refers to, I'm going to go through Roswell and Admiral Byrd, Antarctica, and all that kind of stuff. And when they were really, pushing the whole saucer narrative based on the bomb and all that. And then once I finish those, I'll be pushing stuff out on the 70s, 80s, the 90s, probably do some mud flood stuff. I got a lot of mud flood writings, Tartaria. And it goes on and on from there. I'm, as people know who know me, I write a lot. I put out a lot of material.
Mm-hmm. And in very eloquent fashion. And so, yeah, we look forward to all of that. Especially, the 40s. And as you say, Israel, very important for especially this generation. I believe that was the marker, that was the blooming of the fig tree, and that puts us without a doubt in the end times, and that that Christ spoke about and mentioned this in Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21, and that also in the Apocalypse of Peter, it is without a doubt specified and elaborated upon about its connections to the end times. And the Psalms say, Psalms 90 verse 10, that a generation from what would be 1947 or 48 is 70 years but 80 in strength. And so that put us out to 2017, 2028, 2027, whatever. And of course, I'm not setting any dates or stating any times as to the conclusion of the end, the return of the Messiah or anything. I'm just going by what Scripture has revealed and what the parable of the fig tree has alluded to. And so, very interesting study, one that people should consider. And looking forward to your books, brother, and we'll definitely, come together and speak about them as you release them. But
yeah, thank you for having me on. I really do enjoy it. And every time I come on your show, it's a great time.
Yeah, it was a great pleasure, brother. And lots to consider. Definitely some mind-blowing stuff. But, for me, it all really makes sense because we are seeing the continuation of this whole theme, even in this day and age, Sandy Hook and all of that. The crisis actors, and without a doubt, it's all in your face now. And so people can't deny it. They just really have to open themselves to the possibilities of what you are writing about. And with all of your information, it's hard to deny. All right, brother. Be blessed, all. I'll be on with Rob later on this evening. Catch us at midnight to 2. Be blessed. Good night. Shalom.
Thank you everybody for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.